I haven't found any videos on this particular procedure anywhere on YouTube, so I may be one of the first ones to do it. That's probably because this is not a popular mod. However, today I'm going to be showing a more technical side of this Volkswagen steering wheel. This is off of my Mark 5 GTI. Most videos you'll find on the steering wheel are probably going to be about its removal, so that is not what this video is going to be. This video is going to be, like I said, on the more technical side. If you want to find any videos on how to remove the steering wheel itself, there are probably plenty of those out there. It's not too difficult of a process. All you would need to do is pop out the steering wheel from the back via these two back tabs over here. Then there should be one plug going into here, another plug going into the what is this thing? The airbag. This is a little bit different, and it involves removal of the paddle shifters in the back, right? But even furthermore, not just the removal of the paddle shifters, but taking apart these paddle shifters, which when you look at them, they do look a little intimidating, but they shouldn't be because they aren't. Taking them apart several times. And like I said, there are no videos, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start doing that. So once you have the steering wheel in this very state over here, there really isn't much. So you're going to need a couple of tools. This is one of them. Sorry, not this entire thing. Please excuse my mediocre looking setup over here. This, you know, the most accessible thing I had, but the main point here is you need a T20 Torx to remove pretty much all of the bolts. So first you're going to remove the steering wheel button controls over here. That's one T20 Torx right there. There's another T20 Torx right there. And then these just kind of slide out. You can see this tab right here goes into over here. It's kind of hard to break, but if you do, I'll be impressed. And I typically don't start removing the paddle shifters themselves until I've got this whole assembly off. It's just a little clip over here. On the Mark 5s, it should just be 3 wires, just so you know you're looking at the right thing. This very thin little wire over here. And then you can keep your steering wheel controls off to the side, like so. Now, we're going to remove the actual paddle shifters. Again, another T25. Oh, sorry, T20, not T25. T25 won't fit, so don't use that. I had already loosened these up earlier, but they may be a little bit tighter for you, in which case you can just use a screwdriver. In order to remove the paddle shifter itself, now you can kind of start pulling it out from the back and see it's going to start giving a little bit. And you can see, I don't know if you can see that very well, but there should be, you should be able to see paddle shifter starting to come out like so. And then you can just simply take the wire and just fish it out, just like technical difficulties. It's a bit of a tight space in there, especially depending on how worn out your steering wheel is, but see that little hole right there is where the wire feeds through. And do the same thing to this side. It's got 2 paddle shifters, thankfully. I usually try to start pulling it from the back over here, just like that, because if you start pulling it from the front, it's not going to give you that leverage. Same idea. Start popping it out. Try not to break your clips, your pins, because these paddle shifters are expensive for absolutely no reason. They are just buttons. Okay. We're pretty much done with our steering wheel for right now, so I'll put that off to the side. And we are left with our paddle shifters. Now, what am I going to be doing with these paddle shifters? Great question. They work. They're perfectly operational, but I just don't like the cheap plasticky feel. Now, very commonly you will find additions, excuse my computer, you will find extensions that have an adhesive on the back, and that you can just glue onto your paddle shifters, like so. You can remove them later on when you're selling the car, or for whatever reason, but I'm not going to be doing that. I love my car and I'm going to be keeping it, and I just want to make it better. Enter paddle shifter extensions that are the actual piece itself. I have been looking for these pieces for the longest time for Mark V's. There are plenty of them online, made out of billet aluminum for a lot of other models. I want to say a lot of Audis or Mark 7. So Mark 7s, pretty much any MQB platform, you should be able to find the actual component itself without the adhesive. Because today we're actually going to be removing this back piece, like the button itself, and replacing it with what? With these. Now, this is after months of searching, and I finally found a seller that has these pieces. I am impressed that they exist. I am not entirely impressed with the quality. They did come bent, so I had to bend them back into shape, but look right now, they don't have much play. This one has a little bit because this one was the most bent, but other than that, they're pretty flat. I am going to be doing only one of these paddle shifters on camera for presentational purposes. And without further ado, let's begin. So you are going to see that right here there's a pin, and then there's the entire motherboard right under this whole section. Essentially, what you're going to want aside from your T20, again, this is once the steering wheel is on your table and off of the car. When it's on the car, it requires some other tools, such as an M12 socket, as well as maybe a flathead screwdriver to undo the pins. But once the steering wheel is off, one T20, and then you will also need a very skinny pick type of thing. So I have this little cheap kit over here that I use for my small components. It can be any of these. I'm gonna probably use this one. I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, I was having a little bit of technical difficulties with this one, so but this one is working just fine. So like I said, there's this little tab that's holding in the pin. Kind of bend it up a little bit. It's made out of plastic. It's just fine. Later on, you'll be able to just push it back down, and then you should be able to start sliding this pin from the bottom out, just like that. They're a little bit difficult to remove on their own, so okay, I am adding an additional tool, actually more like an optional tool to the required tools list. So we are up to 3 tools now, but this isn't really super mandatory if you have a pick that is long enough to actually reach in there. But since mine is not, I'm just going to go ahead and pull it the rest of the way out just like that. And there you have your pin. It is the same on either side. However, you probably won't be able to pull it out from the bottom here because the hole is too small. The hole at the top is what is meant to be able to pull that out. So got my pin off to the side over here, and you'll notice that it's still stuck on by the tab. So if you look at this, this is the tab in question. I would not pull it out just like that. Don't do that because it will break. The stock ones are made out of ABS plastic, and it's just not good enough structural integrity wise. So what you're actually going to want to do is pull out the motherboard itself. The way I do this is I start undoing the wires down here. Later on, when you're putting this back together, it's very easy to track where they used to be because they follow just one simple little path, and that will allow me to free up the motherboard a little bit. So I'm just gonna go in here, and if you kind of look under here, it's hard to see, but there are little tabs holding in the motherboard. We're not too concerned about those right now though, because we only have one very important one, and that is the main tab at the top holding it in. And that luckily is accessible right on over here. So if you give it a little bit of love, you should be able to slowly and gradually start to pull the motherboard out. There you go. Once the motherboard is out, it'll start to free everything up. Okay. You don't need to remove the motherboard at this point, and actually my tab is a little worn out from removing this so many times. But regardless, don't forget about your spring. This is vital. That fits right over there. And this would be, if I'm not mistaken, the top or the bottom. Let's see right now. So the top of the paddle shifter, it's standing upright. The spring will be at the top right corner right there. We're gonna hold on to that. Minus. We're gonna do the same exact thing back in reverse. You can see I'm trying to align the spring right into this hole over here. You'll see two holes, okay? The bigger one over here is not where you put the spring. The bigger one over here is actually not gonna be in use anymore. It's just there for design purposes. You can see the difference between the two of these. This one is actually a, I don't know what you would call it, but kind of like a light channel that goes up to your plus and minus to light it up red. This one will not do that because it's not as fancy, but that's okay. I'm not too concerned about that. Perhaps one day I will figure out how to manufacture these with some better lighting options. But if all is done correctly, you should now have what is beginning to be the final design. Now that everything is back in, I can start putting the pin back in to hold the entire assembly together. And as you saw, the center of this pin has a notch for that tab over there. So I just want to push it in a little bit, align it with that tab, and then push that tab back down. Like I said, this thing doesn't see too much action aside from your buttons pressing it to shift gears. And therefore, it's not super important for you to have that tab locked or have this motherboard locked in place, because the whole assembly will essentially just keep it all together. So just like that, you have an assembled paddle shifter with an extension. You may have trouble finding this actual piece over here, but in the event that you do, and just for knowledge sake of what it looks like inside one of these paddle shifter switches, I made this video for y'all to see. And then once you have your paddle shifters back on to the assembly, you just reassemble everything back in the reverse order, and it should look like this. I might play around with the fitment of this one because it's a little loose. But like I said, the quality of these are not the best. They still look beautiful though. Thank you for watching. If you like this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I have very big things coming soon with my MK5 GTI. I love sharing knowledge. Please drop a comment down below, stating what you may like to see on my channel. I am crazy. I like to get into the technical. I like to get into as many things Volkswagen and Audi as humanly possible. I like to try to answer as many questions as possible. So thank you for watching.